Hello, this is a recorded talk from a recent webinar brought to you by Invica. If you haven't come across Invica before, we help organizations shape their digital products, their digital processes and platforms they need to achieve their strategic goals, whether those goals are centered on business growth, optimization, or innovation, or all of those things. So head to invica.com to learn more and enjoy the video.
So my name is Will Clayton. I am the head of innovation here at Boohoo Group. I've been in the group for about 4.5 years, in which time I've covered a couple of different roles in transformation and in technology across the business. And really my role now is about how I take the foundational blocks we've done in the past and take them forwards. And a lot of that comes back to how we can make better use of data, how we can optimize our processes and become more efficient and give a better customer service as we've grown as a group. Who are Boohoo Group? I'm sure many of you know quite a lot about the group, but our vision is to be leading the e-commerce fashion market for 16 to 45-year-olds. The group's been around for 16 years, starting in 2006 with Boohoo, and 2013 our first menswear brand with Boohoo Man. But really in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, we've seen a big growth in the number of brands within our portfolio. A lot of those names on there will be hugely familiar to you as staples of the British High Street, or former staples of the British High Street. In terms of our scale, last year we had revenues which were just short of £2 billion, 62 million orders and 20 million active customers. When I joined the group back in 2018, I think the prior year had been about 500 million. So the growth over those past few years has been quite huge. How do we operate as a group? Well, this is something which I think it's well documented in terms of the sort of test and repeat process we have. But I think it's quite key to understand that when we look at growth and optimizing our processes as a business. So the first thing we do is we really monitor what's going on in the market at the time. So we intend to follow fashion quite quickly. You can see how trends are changing and react to that. So we're monitoring what's going on, seeing how products are performing, what's happening on the likes of Instagram and other places in terms of influencer behavior as well. What we'll then do is we'll test small volumes of products, launch them in the market and see which ones work. And from that, you can make decisions about which ones we're going to keep and buy into in more depth, and that's the repeat process, and which ones we're not, and we're just going to sell through, and those products won't be repeated over time. And when you look at what that is and the way the group has grown in that period of time, one of the challenges we faced a few years ago, actually just prior to the pandemic, was really when we asked this question, was how do we optimize our processes to support the growth that we're going through? And when you think about an e-commerce business like ours, pure play online fashion, there's elements of those processes which are quite linear. So as we grow, we have to have more orders, we have to pick more products from a warehouse, we have to put more products into packages and send them around. So the fulfillment, the picking and the packing processes grow in this linear kind of way. There's other processes in there which at the time were linear, but perhaps you could do things with them to optimize them and make them have a more of a scalable approach. And so those would be things like the decision-making processes around forecasting and planning of products and so on. The area I'm going to focus on is one which I've focused on for the last couple of years, and that's actually around that core managing processes process. So how do we create products, how do we then manage them, and how do we get them on the website? A couple of years ago, we were probably launching around 1,000 new products every single week with the brands that we had at the time. This, up till now, it's probably more like 2,000 to 2,500 at times. So there's been a huge growth in the way that we're launching new products and then monitoring how they work. So how do we go about it? So about 2.5 years ago, this is roughly what the process looked like for creating a new product and getting it onto our websites. And it varied a little bit by brand, and there are some nuances to this, but this is pretty much the outline process. We'd have an idea for that new product, which could come from inspiration from what we've seen in other places. It could come from an amendment to an existing product we have. Typically then we'd be writing a paper order on carbon copy paper and noting down what that product was, attributing its taxonomy, and effectively it would be handwritten, potentially quite scribbly writing done quite quickly, which would then be copied by another person into our ERP system. So already we're double keying information and we've got this potential for mismatch with that information, as well as it's not fully understood by the person who's rekeying it. Because of that, we'd then be making some edits in that ERP system before we export the data to our website, and then that's when we start categorizing it. So slightly strangely, we've taken the data to the website, then we're doing the categorization. At this point, we're shifting between buying and merchandising on our e-commerce teams. So there's handoffs between teams as well. Finally, the end of the process, we then enrich that data further. So our translations or any deep tags from visual AI happen directly onto the website, which meant that data is great in terms of search and discovery and the localization for different parts of the world, but that data wasn't finding its way back into the systems that our buyers and merchandisers would use to understand trends and things. Ultimately, though, that gets the product to the customer and they can buy it. So what we did with that process was kind of break it down into 3 chunks. Now, you'll notice I've only put 2 brackets on the page. However, there are 3 chunks to that process. There's product creation, which is that beginning part, and then there's enrichment and publishing. Now, the reason why there's only 1 bracket for enrichment and publishing is because some of that's back to front and it's all a bit mixed together. So what we did, like any good story, is went from a beginning, a middle, and an end to this process. So we'll start at the beginning. So that is product creation. Now, I've already given a little bit of insight into what might be the problems with product creation in the old process. A lot of it was the fact that we were doing things very manually, writing things onto paper and copying it into our systems. One of the problems we had with our legacy ERP system was that that actually encumbered the process yet further. It could take 15, 20, 25 minutes at times to get that information into the ERP system, purely because of the volume we were trying to put in at once, and the database locks up and things slow down. That's notwithstanding the problem you had with that data often being incorrect because we're trying to read someone else's handwriting and rekey it into a system. There was a lack of validation on that data as well, which meant at times you could get products being attributed in completely incorrect ways. What we did with this part of the process was put in place a digitized workflow, a digitized way of working, and that's through something we called Order App. It's not the most imaginative name, but it does explain what it does. So what Order App does is essentially gives our buyers and our merchandisers a tool they can use on their phones, tablets, or laptops. They can create a product and order wherever they are in the world. It works offline as well. Allows them to add in all the information about that product, add some photos of it as well. They can add notes. They can then provide a copy to the supplier so the supplier knows what they're doing, but it also digitizes the data from the point of entry, allows those orders to be managed and we can understand their status and where they're up to. And you can also do review and approval of those orders directly in the app as well. Creating an order in this way gives us improved efficiency and much better data capture. And in terms of the timing for doing this, it takes about 2 minutes to create an order in Order App. The approvals and things take an extra couple of minutes or so as you're reviewing the data, but you're taking a process which was probably 20, 25 minutes down to 2 or 3 if needs be. And that's really critical in a business like ours, where speed is of the essence. The second part to that process, which came along, and this is where we became involved with Invika as well, was around product enrichment and the management of the product information once it's been input. And that really comes down to product information management. So you can see on this diagram, Order App's over there on the left-hand side. And what we did was we put in place a better backbone to our product information. We created Order App to work with our legacy systems at the time, and we had to manually configure the data options in there. So it had validation on that data, but it required quite a lot of configuration to ensure the options were valid. What we've done by implementing a PIM system, and we went with Akeneo, was we can now link Order App and the options available in it directly to the attributes and product types that we want to manage in Akeneo. That means that the data integrity from Order App through into our PIM system is fully intact. We actually run a couple of customizations there on the front end as well, which allows us to generate our SKUs directly into PIM. So we don't have to have Order App talking to ERP to get a SKU code, then into our PIM to enrich it. We go straight into the PIM. What we then can do with that data, now that it's more consistent and it's in a central place, is use it for more things. And this is where you can really optimize that workflow. So already you can see the workflow for getting a product from point of creation through to the websites. It looks a little bit complicated, of course, but it's a lot simpler and it's more data-driven and more dynamic than it ever was before. That information from PIM is what we use as the single source of truth for our products. So it goes to our ERP and finance systems, goes to our warehouse management systems, And it also goes to Products DB. Products DB is essentially our forward cache, where we also can bring in information around pricing and stock levels. And that can be used then to power the websites and product feeds. So this is great. This is a great foundation to having solid product data, one source of the truth, everyone agrees on. But what can we do next? How can we take this that step further and get more efficiency from it? And that's the third part of the story. That's when we come into this world of publishing. Now, strictly, one of the things I'm going to say on here isn't actually publishing, but it does actually aid publishing, and that's why I've included it in this section. And this is where we're looking at taking that process we've got, where we've digitized what was a manual workflow, we've removed rekeying of data, and we've got consistency. How can we use AI and automation to take it that step further? And this is the stuff which I'm now looking at in the business. So there's two blobs in yellow on this page. The diagram's updated slightly. The one on the left is really around how we can use AI to supplement the information that we've got already from our buyers. So order app's still feeding in, they're making amends directly in PIM or using Product Wizard. But what we're actually able to do now is take the visual tags that would have gone straight to the websites in the past and bring them back into PIM. Initially, this is to fill in blanks where we might not have filled it in at the point of product creation, but ultimately, you could use this to start reducing the burden on buyers in order app and actually use the AI to provide some of those tags instead. What I'm talking about here is things like necklines and sleeve lengths and lengths of dresses, things which you can quite obviously get from an image of a product. We're a pure play e-commerce business, so we have photos of all our products, so we can use this technology in a really quite powerful way. On the right hand side is Auto Categorizer. So as I mentioned before, we are at this point in time launching potentially 2,500 new products every single week across those brands. And we've got a huge number of legacy products as well within PIM. Making sure those are visible to customers in the way those customers are searching for them is critical to getting a good sales performance. At the moment, that process is mostly manual. The e-commerce team have to look at what the tags say and what the photos are and assign the products to those categories. Any particular website might have 1,500 categories to assign products to, and a product can belong to more than one. So if you have a dress which is black and lace and V-neck with short sleeves, and it's in a midi length, it could fit into something like 15 different categories for midi length dresses and black dresses and so on. What Auto Categorizer does is it takes that legwork off the e-commerce team and it can do it automatically. It changes their role from being one of assigning individual products to assigning the rules that will automatically assign those products. And that really gives you that scale and the ability to categorize en masse and at speed. What that gives us is this ability to have efficient, data-driven publishing for our products. And for a business like ours that has so many products going through, that's really key to optimizing this part of our business as well. So overall, what that product workflow ends up looking like is something like this. We've got the idea still at the beginning. We're digitally creating those products and those orders in Order App. We're storing that data in a consistent centralized format in PIM, supplementing that information using AI where we can, automating the way we do category assignment, then we're exporting and publishing on the websites so our customers can buy it. And by doing so, that really optimizes our workflow and sets us in a position that we can carry on with sustained growth. Thank you.